Hello and welcome to this interview. I am Professor Jagdish Tonannavar, editor of the Spring Chronicle, an online platform for publishing scholarly articles. For more, please visit springchronicle.org. This interview is called Journey into Success. The essence of one's accomplishments is to pursue motivations, excel, and share their spirit and culture through effective communication. My today's guest is Professor Shivanand Kanavi, who has demonstrated all these aspects. Professor Shivanand Kanavi has had a varied career. He graduated in theoretical physics, did research in the same area, and taught it as well. He then moved into economics, worked as economic consultant. Then next he went into business journalism and finally becoming a senior executive in the Tata Group. Professor Kanavi is something of a globe traveler too and has written books. He is currently an adjunct faculty at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. I am going to ask Professor Kanavi how all this happened. Professor Shivanand Kanavi, very warm welcome to this interview. And thank you very much for your valuable time.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Professor, my first question is, you were born in Dharwad and you received school and college education here. And Dharwad is home to the giants in the fields of literature, Hindustani music, art, culture, education, science and technology. And you come from a family of highly accomplished Kannada writers. Specifically, your father being a well-known poet, Nadoja Tanveer Kanavi. How all this influenced you in your early life?
Well, actually, I was interested in literature, but only as a reader. And house was full of books. My mother was a short story writer. My father, and she used to, we used to read her stories. And my father used to read out his poems as soon as he wrote them. We were probably his first audience, even before publication, and so on. So, and a whole lot of writers, senior writers like Bente, Gokak, Shivaram Karant, Adiga, G.S. Shurudrapa, and many others who were younger than my father, they all used to visit the house. So we have seen them all. I've seen them all in childhood as guests in the house. A person who was somewhat like me was my grandfather. Whereas my father was very focused, very disciplined, and all that in all his activities, including even if he has to speak in a elementary school, he'll make notes and go. He was very well organized and very disciplined and focused. If he's doing something, he will not do anything else. He'll be totally focused on that. But my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Mr. Gidnavar, my mother's father, he had a fantastic home library, and probably most of his savings he had spent on collecting books, and most of them he used to import from England. And he used to be in the service, in the government service, from the 20s onwards in the British days. And he had a very large family. He had 10 children, but whatever little savings he had, he used to spend them on books. So when we were growing up in the 60s, he had already retired, and we used to go to his house in the village, a small village in Belgaum district. And there was no electricity in Kandil light. We used to spend our evenings, but he had a fantastic library, and not only lots of books, English and Kannada, but also he used to get regular National Geographic and Time magazine and Life magazine and all that to that village home. so, so uh, every summer we used to go to spend some time with our grandparents, and I used to be lost in his library. But he used to say, You're like me, jack of all trades but master of none." So I was interested in many things from beginning, and in fact, I saw the first science encyclopedia and all that in his library. Um, I had the interest in literature, and of course, my mother used to be a singer. She has learned music, and she used to sing on Akashwani also, mostly light music at that time in the 60s regularly. But so our house was full of music. We used to regularly listen to all the classical music programs on Dharwad Akashwani, which was the main patron and source of music for us at that time. There was no television and any other form of music. Of course, my grandfather had a small gramophone in which, in these old plates, 78 RPM and 45 RPM, I had heard
Yes, yes.
all the greats, including Mansoor and Karim Khan and Amir Khan and all that. Um, in his village house, he used to have that big HMV thing in that. Um, with that musical thing, and then just when we were growing up, when I was still in college, a lot of new writers like Chandrasekhar Patil, Giriddi Govindraj, Siddhaling Patan Shetty, they started this Sankramana new magazine, and also they started a new theatre movement. So though there was old theatre, which I had seen some of them, company theatres they used to be called, company dramas by Engi Balappa and all these people, some of them. But now these people started experimental theatre. They started a theatre group called Antaranga in Dharwad, and they produced and wrote profusely a lot of new modern dramas. So there was a rich literary and musical environment in Dharwad, and there were live concerts of music also. I remember at least during Shravana,
Hmm.
regularly Mallikarjun Mansur used to sing in Murugamat on Shravan Somwar. One of the Shravan Somwar, he'll give a concert there. Because he was also a devotee of the Murtyunjay Swamiji who used to be there in Dharwad Murgamat. So was my father. In fact, my father grew up in that Prasad Nilaya. Without that, he wouldn't have had high school education also. He came from a small village and a very not so well off family. It's only because of Murtyunjay Swamiji's Prasad Nilaya that he could get educated himself and then later went to college, etc. So we had a very rich cultural atmosphere, but my interest grew in science. So I was more interested in science and mathematics right from school onwards, and particularly when I got introduced to some modern physics in school, I said I'm going to study physics. And I stuck to that. I stuck to that, and when I went to college, also I stuck to physics and mathematics, and continued till quite some time. Then when I totally switched off from physics to something else.
Any particular instance which motivated you to take to science, or you are temperamentally attracted to it?
I was temperamentally attracted to it. I was good in mathematics and physics. So was my father. In fact, my father was good in mathematics. So he used to
Oh,
teach us mathematics at home when we were in school.
ah,
So mathematics was very dear to me, and physics also. We had very good teachers, especially in college. In Karnataka College, we had very good teachers in physics, good physics department. So um, it was my temperament that took me to you can say to science and physics particularly. I was
yeah.
not very happy about chemistry and biology, because at that level, chemistry and biology did not have any logic or theory. It was mostly memorizing. You know,
Ah,
it was at a much higher level that you could see theory, but by that time, I was already into physics, so I missed it later. That later I had to relearn chemistry and biology when I was in journalism, because I was meeting a lot of biologists and pharmaceutical industry people and so on. So to understand them, I had to learn, again study chemistry and biology. But I was totally focused on physics and mathematics earlier.
after you finished your undergrad from Karnataka Science College, right?
Yeah.
How did you choose your career path?
Oh, um, interestingly, I think when I was in second year BSc or something like that, Karnataka
Mm.
University started one small office in the administrative building called Career Guidance Cell. And Professor Kalyan Shetty, I think his name was Kalyan Shetty. I think he was in chemistry department. He was made in charge of that,
Mm.
and there was hardly, it was just one room in the administration building, but they started putting up prospectus, of various institutes and all that. So I used to go and sit there and look up all the institutes in, they had got some IIT brochures, they had got IISc brochure, TIFR, various, all the research institutions brochures. So I got to know what is going on where, at least, what are the subjects, what kind of research is being done, who are the professors there, etc. So there I saw that I had decided I want to study theoretical physics, and so I found that for MSc, other than studying in Karnataka University, I was if I when I looked outside, IIT Kanpur seemed to be very good at that time,
Mm.
which had a 2-year MSc program. IISc did not have an MSc program at that time, and TIFR was a research organization. And among all the IITs, IIT Kanpur had the best physics department. So I decided to apply there. So that is the only place I had applied. Actually, I didn't apply anywhere else. you know, um, and it so happened that from my batch, actually 5 students got selected to IIT at that time from my batch in Kannada College.
Ah,
One went to IIT Madras, two went to IIT Bombay, and two of us went to IIT Kanpur.
mm.
Myself and another Mr. Patil. So we joined there. So that is how it was. Otherwise, my father had no idea either about physics or about other than what is happening in Karnataka University. He knew all the people there. In fact, since I grew up on the campus, I almost knew all the senior professors there. And even when I was in college, we had started a physics association. So we had called various professors to come and give lectures in the college also. So I was familiar with what is going on in Karnataka University, but my
Yeah.
father had no clue on what I am interested in or what I want to do. In fact, sometimes when people used to ask him, "What is Shivanand doing?" He'll say he did not know what is particle physics, so he used to say practical physics, something
Yes.
like that.
Did you visit our department anytime during those days? Physics department at
Uh,
Karnataka.
just to meet people. Professor Tavade was there. He was the head of the department. Then
Ah,
Professor Saudatti, Professor Umakant, Professor Korwar were there. GC Hiramat was our neighbor, in fact, in the campus. Even Professor Umakanta was one of our neighbors because we were in the D quarters,
oh,
Raiders quarters.
what was the
I think
year?
it's 1961 to 72.
Yeah. Okay. There was one Dr. K. Surana Rao. I worked with him.
Okay,
K.
I
Surana Rao.
don't remember him. I don't remember him.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe he joined later, or
He
I don't
was
know.
there probably. Yeah.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. So among the five IITs at that time, What made IIT Kanpur popular?
IIT Kanpur, for me, I chose IIT Kanpur because IIT Kanpur had the best physics department, and particularly theoretical physics department, theoretical physics. But IIT Kanpur became famous because, as you know, the first four IITs, that is Delhi, Bombay, Kanpur, and Madras, were set up with collaboration with foreign institutions and governments.
Yeah.
So Kanpur was set up with American collaboration, Delhi with British collaboration, Madras with German collaboration, and Bombay with Russian collaboration. And IIT Kanpur was a pioneer in setting up, starting the first material science department, first computer science department, and so on. In fact, Narayan Murthy was a student in IIT Kanpur. He did his MTech there. And so master's level and PhD level computer science, they were the first to start in India. And much later, they were also the first to start a BTech course in computer science in the 80s.
Professor CNR also came from IIT Kanpur.
Yeah, CNR Rao was there in
Chemistry.
Kanpur in chemistry. And in PT Narasimhan was chemistry was very flamboyant. So PT Narasimhan, George, and CNR Rao, these were the three stars. Then Balasubramaniam, D. Balasubramaniam was there. I think Padmanabhan was there. They were all in IIT Kanpur chemistry department. And in physics, there was Gyan Mohan, Tulsidas, H.S. Mani, T.V. Ramakrishnan. They were in the physics department. And there are many others, of course. G.K. Mehta, Rasni.
I remember Professor P.T. Narasimhan's visit to our department while I was a student, and he gave wonderful talks on NMR. Yeah, I still remember that.
Okay. In our department, the NMR was being held by, was led by B.D. Nageshwar Rao, B.D.N. Rao. And there was, this, there was another thing. Forget the name. That group was led by GNR Rao, and NMR was led by BDN Rao, and spectroscopy was very strong. Pucha Venkateshwarlu was a leading spectroscopist, and he was heading that.
Yes, Pucha Venkateshwarlu, yeah.
And I was lucky because PV was also, invited Asundi to come and give lectures there. So I attended one of Asundi's lecture in Kanpur. Who was a great contemporary of Raman and a great spectroscopist.
Yeah. So then you went to Northeastern University, Boston, right?
Yeah. Again, it was you can say accidental in that. I had a lot of tough time getting adjusted to IIT Kanpur because the whole method of teaching and method of testing and everything was very different from what we had gone through. So it was all very Americanized, American textbooks, and only problems, and nothing descriptive. Whereas we had grown up with reading books which are British authors, and it was all descriptive, and explain this, describe that, and write short notes on this and that sort of thing. Hardly any numerical work. And so, in fact, in my batch of 16 students, 6 people failed, and all 6 were gold medalists. One was from Jaipur, one was from Nagpur, one was from Jabalpur, one was from Calcutta University, and one was from Kurukshetra University. So nearly 6 people flunked, and they were all gold medalists from their university. And again, even Kanpur had its own entrance test and interviews and all that. So they were bright students, but they could not cope with it. And so for me, the struggle was to just keep myself afloat. Forget topping the class. Because I didn't know what the hell was going on. When we were used to studying for 1 month before the exams, and spend the rest of the year doing whatever we want. And here every week there were assignments and tests, and then midterm tests and all that sort of thing. So just couldn't cope with that. It was very traumatic for me. At least 1 or 2 semesters. First year was gone in getting adjusted to that in a 2 year course. So anyway, so my grades were not so great. They were okay, but not so great. And the textbooks also were of a very high standard compared to what we had studied in BSc. So though all of us were good students at BSc level from our colleges and universities, here it was totally different. Big gap was there. Whereas at that time, in the 1963-64, Government of India had a scheme called National Science Talent Search Program,
Yes. Right.
and with that, they used to choose the few very good students after their PUC, and then for 3 years they'll send them on a summer schools to various higher education institutions like IIC, TIFR, BRC, various IITs, and so on. So, and there in the summer schools they were exposed to a lot of new ideas, new methods, new approaches, and so on. So half our batch was science talent scholars, and other half was out of 16, 8 were science talent scholars, 8 were not. And all the people who flunked were not the science talent scholars.
Mhm.
Six who flunked. And two of us who survived and floated were from Dharwad, who were also not science talent scholars. So literally science talent scholars had heard all those, in fact, were familiar with some of those textbooks which were used and the approach also and so on. So they had an advantage, you can say. They were exposed to it. And also, there was one program which was very good, which had a BSc program. That is, IIT Kharagpur had a BSc program, BSc honors program. And we had two students from there, and they were very good because they were already in the IIT system from right after PUC. So, they managed it for them, it was very easy. Anyway, overall, after that, then I was looking around for where I got interested in lot of foundational mathematics and physics of quantum mechanics, particularly. So I wanted to study in a place which had a lot of mathematical physics and theoretical physics. Now, other than TIFR, where else I could apply for PhD? So I was looking around, and again, those days there was no. This is 1971, 73, 74. So no internet and all that. So in IIT Kanpur library, I used to go and sit and check out all the American universities prospectus and their course masters and PhD courses and all that. Based on that, I chose some 2 3 interesting universities which had very good physics departments, and then I had to go through all this GRE exam for physics, advanced in physics and all that. And my GRE score, I took a semester earlier than necessary, so my score was not in the top 90 95 percentile. I was in the late 80s. Now, because I took it in my first year and not in the second year in between, so I was not exposed to many topics which were then asked. So then I decided with this score in the late 80s, where can I apply? Where can I get admission? It was still good by normal standards, but then it is not good enough for the top 10 20 universities. So then I said I'll not go by the reputation of the university. I'll research the department and
Mhm.
which department is doing what and who are the professors there, etc. So I had chosen 2 3 universities and applied only there. Northeastern was one, and I think I had applied to Syracuse and one other place. Now Syracuse gave me admission, but said we can't give you fellowship. We'll give you tuition free. I was in no condition to go without scholarship, but Northeastern gave me full fellowship, research teaching assistantship. So I decided to go to Northeastern, and it had a very good physics, theoretical physics department also, and large physics department as such, including experimental and all that.
At that time, I remember, Professor, you had narrated a story to me. Did you choose to discontinue research, and there was some kind of a political unrest in India, and then so on.
Yeah. See, I left India in August 74.
Hmm.
So as you know, 74 already was a very tumultuous period in India. There are a lot of strikes and textile strike and postal railway strike. In fact, when I returned from IIT Kanpur, the railway strike was on. So it took us three and a half days to reach Dharwad, all unreserved, and we were just traveling like these people who go on pilgrimages, tirthyatris. So you don't know which train you will get, and when it will reach there, etc. Because the railway strike was on. None of the railways were systems were working. So 74 was a very tumultuous period. There was a lot of opposition to Mrs. Gandhi, which had surprised many because in 71 after the Pakistan war, literally everybody thought nobody can touch Indira Gandhi, and she had also won the elections in a very big way. She had got a big majority, and she was lauded by everybody, including all the opposition leaders, etc. In fact, I think at that time after the creation of Bangladesh. So, but within a year or two, by 73, tide was turning against her. She was becoming unpopular, and there was a lot of opposition to her. And 74 was full of agitations against her.
Yeah.
And at that time, Jayaprakash Narayan, in fact, it was students in Gujarat who started a movement. It was called Navnirman movement. Who were, and that Jayaprakash Narayan picked up and used it in Bihar and started against corruption, etc. Now I was interested in what they're doing. What is Jayaprakash Narayan saying, etc. And he used to produce um, he used to produce um, a weekly or something like that, a magazine called Everyman's, and I think Kuldeep Nair used to edit it, in which it was started by Jayaprakash Narayan and his band of followers at that time on their ideas on what is wrong in India and what should be done, etc. Now he was invited to IIT Kanpur when I was in Kanpur, and he came and one of our physics professors had invited him, who was very influential, who was himself a grandson of Rajendra Prasad. Dr. Gyan Mohan was a very well-known and senior physicist, and he was grandson of Rajendra Prasad, and he had invited Jayaprakash Narayan. Jayaprakash Narayan came and addressed a very large meeting in IIT Kanpur in the auditorium, and I found him totally, confused. So, so I wrote to my father. I said, I don't think, I don't know what he is talking about. He doesn't seem to know what he is talking about. He's saying total revolution, and what it means he can't describe. He can't explain what is this total revolution and how he's going to achieve it or any such thing. And so I was very disappointed with whatever he was doing. Whereas my father and his generation were very impressed with Jayaprakash Narayan. Okay. And in fact, for the first time in his career, probably my father had stepped out and gone in demonstrations again, of the JP followers and so on in Dharwad once or twice. They used to tie black bands over their mouth, silent torture type of thing. Okay, because dissent is being suppressed by Mrs. Gandhi, that type of thing.
Yes.
Emergency had not yet come. Anyway, so all these things were going on. And I had a long stretch from April to August, 3 4 months free after my IIT to before I went abroad. So I was also reading up what is going on, etc. First time, and then I went to America, and there I started reading a lot of leftist literature written by black writers, written by in lot of in the 60s, as you know, there were a lot of anti-colonial movements in Africa and also, and Vietnam War was still going on. So, lot of anti-imperialist, anti-colonial writings were still around, even in 70s, though the movements were mostly in the 60s, and almost Vietnam War is coming to an end, but still the lot of these leftist writings were going on, and a lot of black writing was also there because in the 60s there were many big uprisings in the by the blacks in the American cities, particularly Detroit and many other industrial cities. There were large uprisings or riots or whatever you call them at that time in the 60s, and big movements had taken place of the youth against the war in Vietnam. And so there was a atmosphere of questioning what is American policy within America. As against the earlier period, 50s particularly, was very, very anti-communist and very authoritarian in America. Anybody who had any who questioned American foreign policy or a domestic policy was called a communist, and either he lost his job or was thrown into jail. It was very bad. It is called the McCarthy period. In the 50s, it was full of that very
Yeah.
authoritarian anti-communist feeling, and nobody could question what the government is doing. Whereas in the 60s and 70s, atmosphere was different because large mass movements had taken place against questioning the Vietnam War, questioning America's policy by the American youth. You know, so you couldn't call half of America as anti-American. So so there was a you can say slightly different atmosphere in the 70s in America, even though all the movements had were waning. Vietnam War was coming to an end. The black movement was had taken a different shape, and so on. And Nixon was the president at that time, and he had just been impeached, and somebody else had come in. So America itself was in transition. Then this whole oil crisis had taken place. Another war had taken place. So there are a lot of things going on. And at that time, I just started reading some literature, political, social literature, other than what I was totally focused on. I was totally focused on physics. Whereas I remember in IIT Kanpur, when some people came and told me, "Oh, we have a study circle in Kanpur. Do you want to come and join?" and all that, I said, "No, I have no time for that. I'm only interested in physics and mathematics." But now I was really more interested in while I was doing very well in my department and in all the courses. And I got the best physicist there as my guide, and I topped. They have a very difficult exam, almost 16 hours exam called PhD qualifying exam. So after all the coursework, you have to get through that. Only after you pass that, you can join for a PhD qualifying exam. So I had topped that also, and I had got the best physicist. But then my mind was going away from that because within about 6 months of I going there, emergency was declared in India, June of 75. So I started interacting with more other Indian students also. And then in 76, uh, um, we started actually opposing emergency. And then we started organizing within Indian students and faculty in America against the what Mrs. Gandhi was doing, this emergency and all that. So then, not only in our university, we started going to different campuses and meeting people there, holding meetings there, small meetings, big meetings, etc. So I started moving towards. I became an anti-emergency activist. So literally every single campus, so dozens and dozens of campuses I visited at that time, doing propaganda against emergency in 76, 76, 77. Then 77, emergency was lifted, new elections were held. Just around that time, I decided to drop my PhD this thing. 1 year already, I had done 3 years of coursework and I had done 1 year of research also. I decided to drop it and come back to India. So I decided to come back to India you can say, in one sense, disillusioned with physics. In another sense, I was quite attracted by movements for change in India. That things should change in India. And, and the reason,
Yeah,
if you
it looks
ask me,
like yeah, ah,
yeah, go ahead, go
it,
ahead.
it looks like you seem to have compromised on your research career, right? You came back to India.
Exactly. So there are two things. One is, of course, I was getting more and more. I was reading a lot more of social, history and political science and economics and all that of India, and I was getting attracted by the Marxist analysis of India and what is happening in India, and that there should be change in India. On the other hand, I was also getting more and more disillusioned with physics. Though I was in the midst of it, and in fact, my
Okay.
guide had just started, written some epoch-making papers on at that time what was called supersymmetry and supergravity, um, and it looked very promising at that time as a grand unification theories. But I was getting disillusioned with that because in fact, what they were doing, which looked interesting, was physics in 8 dimensions. Four were the space-time dimensions, and four were what were called Grassmann coordinates or anti-commuting coordinates. So I said, this is not going anywhere. And of course, it didn't go anywhere later, but at that time it created some excitement. In fact, there is a whole geometry named after them. Arnold Nath geometry karke. There is a geometry named after them. But I didn't. I was getting disillusioned. I said that there is a big crisis in physics also. After the quantum revolution, the next big achievement was the quantum electrodynamics, which was Feynman, Schwinger, etc. in the 40s. What they did. Then after that, this unification of weak and electromagnetic interaction, which Salam and Weinberg and all that had done 69 in the 65 to 69 period. But then there was a total stagnation. Anything that was going on was not getting anywhere. All the quarks theories, all the particle physics theories were not getting anywhere. String theory has not yet come up, but then that has also not gone anywhere.
Hmm.
It has just introduced a lot of complicated mathematics into physics. That's all. So even I was getting, and on the one hand, I was getting attracted towards social themes and social change, and on the other hand, I was getting disillusioned with physics. So it all combined in my decision to chuck physics and come back to India.
Professor, then on your return from States, you went to IIT Bombay.
That was another accident. What happened is,
Uh-huh.
when I came back, I decided to settle down in Mumbai. But then when I looked around in Mumbai and I tried to become a lecturer somewhere, I had to feed myself also. So I couldn't get a job because I'd come in the middle of the term. I'd come in November 77, and there were no jobs because they said, "Oh, we recruit in April, for the June term and onwards. So you should come back in April." Now, what do I do? So I was staying as a guest in IIT Bombay. So I walked into physics department. And then I met the best physicist there was Professor Patil, S.H. Patil in theoretical physics. So I met him. So he asked me and all that, and what are you doing? And then he asked me, where were you? Said I was in Northeastern. I was, what were you doing? Said I was working with Arnold. Oh, he had, of course, everybody had heard about Arnold and his geometry and his work in supersymmetry, etc. He said, oh, you're working with Arnold. Then why did you drop it and come? I said, no, no, I didn't explain everything to him. I just said personal reasons and all. He said, okay, okay. Uh, but would you like to continue? And nobody is working in supersymmetry here or axiomatic field theories. I am working in particle physics for all these years. But if you want to do work with me and do a PhD, then I'll recommend you for that with the department. He said. Now I had no job. Now at that time there is a PhD scholarship of 340 rupees, a princely sum of 340 rupees per month. Okay, in IIT Bombay. So for that reason, I joined IIT Bombay. and, and there were, of course, many interviews and all that. Then the IIT Senate passed a special resolution to admit me and all that in the middle of the term. So joined as a PhD scholar again. And of course, it was a totally different subject I was working in. We were working on some applying dispersion relations and some techniques of particle physics to atomic and molecular problems. And we published 5 papers within 2 years' time in international journals. And
Oh,
I was planning to put that with the introduction and conclusion and 5 papers in between and submit it as thesis. And my guide, Mr. Dr. Patil, was okay with that, and had written the introduction also and given it to him. And then I got an offer to teach in Bombay University College. Then I said, if I miss this now, I'll have to wait 1 more year. So I let me resign here and submit my thesis in 3 4 months. Because I already finished all my work, and I'll submit the thesis in 3 4 months. So why should I cannot take a scholarship here also and join some other college also outside and all that. Then meanwhile, I was very active in IIT Bombay students also. And at that time, there was big agitation among students and workers in IIT Bombay, which led to Gera of the director, and the IIT got closed down. For the first time, everybody was asked to leave the hostel and evacuate everything and go. And it was announced on All India Radio that IIT Bombay has been closed down till further notice. Karke. This was in
oh,
1980.
oh.
Now, I was active in that, but so were many other, hundreds of students who had actually participated in that. Now, after when I already teaching in Bombay University in one of the colleges, I get a letter from IIT Bombay saying your PhD, this is the synopsis, we're returning it to you. Your PhD registration has been cancelled.
Oh,
And and one line was very interesting in that. It said that because you have finished your work too early.
oh. Hmm.
So minimum you should be on campus for 2.5 or 3 years, and you have done it in 2 years. So we are cancelling your PhD. So instead of giving me a medal, they cancelled my PhD. And later I came to know it was for political reasons they had done it.
Okay.
And a year or two later, many faculty members came and met me. I was teaching at that time in another college in Bombay. They came and told me, "Come back and finish your. Why don't you finish it?" I said, "No. What for? Why did they first cancel my PhD?" He said, "No, no. There was some politics in it. Okay, because they had decided I was one of the ringleaders of that student movement there, so they had taken a political decision to cancel my PhD. Okay, so the only reason they could find is this that I had finished it too early."
Very
So,
unusual
so to this day,
reason.
to this day, I don't have a PhD. I'm an eternal PhD student. Hmm.
Professor, then came a big turn in your career. You became an economic consultant during 1984 to 91.
Yeah. So 1978 to 80, I was in IIT Bombay, and from 80 to 84, I was
Ah,
teaching in Bombay University. And in 84, I left Bombay University and also physics. And I was already, since I came to Bombay, I was very active in the trade union movement there, movements in the slums, and all the social political movements in Bombay. I was very active. And many of my friends who had come back from US more or less with me in 77, 78, who I knew in the anti-emergency had come back, and I was in touch with them, and some of them had also set up one economic consultancy in Delhi. So I decided to join with them and work from Bombay, while also continuing to be active in the political social movements in Mumbai. So that's how I became an economic consultant. And what we were doing that they were doing at that time was mostly advising both the government and various lots of aided programs used to be there in the social sector, in the all that, in the health, education, various things. And there are many of these aid agencies wanted the projects to be monitored and evaluated, etc. How effective they are, are they achieving the aims, is the money being spent properly or not, and all that. So they needed independent consultants to do all that kind of evaluation, etc. So this group was quite active in that social. It was called developmental economics and social measurements of outcomes of these projects, etc. So I was with them from, you can say, 87 to 91, 84 to 91. Um, and then I changed again.
then you went to business journalism, right?
Yeah, actually, initially it was not business journalism. What happened was I had started writing articles because by now I could write on science, technology, and I'd studied a lot of history, economics, and political science and philosophy. So this is typically what a journalist needs. Journalists need a very wide amount of reading, and other than writing skills and being being able to explain complex ideas to lay readers, you also need wide background and not a specialist. So I had started writing to various newspapers and magazines. In fact, I wrote two of my first articles were in Kannada. I wrote it and sent it to Lankesh, and Lankesh published it in his Lankesh Patrike in 91. And in 92, there was this group called Observer, and they had a very good paper which had a it was only used to come out on Sunday earlier, called Sunday Observer. Then later, from 91, 92, it had become, they had also started a daily newspaper called Observer of Business and Politics. So there I gave some articles, and there were a couple of IITians there in journalism. So they said that, we need somebody like you who has a lot of wide knowledge base. Would you like to join full time? And I said, why not? And that's how I changed from I got into actually full time journalism in 92.
With this theoretical physics background, I think at every stage when you left the field, you proved to be a very fit man to do other jobs also. Wonderful.
Hmm.
Then
So then, from the
coming to your
observer, what happened was, Observer was a good group in the sense that they had the best salaries and they had the best computer systems. That time there were no computers anywhere in media, but they had pumped in because Reliance had taken that group. Now Reliance wanted to a big entry into media because Reliance was getting hammered in the media also. Even though many editors were pro-Reliance, but they were also getting hammered in by, especially in Indian Express, they were getting hammered. Arun Shauri was writing articles against them, and he was saying that Dhirubhai should be put in jail and all that sort of thing. Okay, Gurumurthy and Arun Shauri were very much against Dhirubhai at that time,
yes, yes.
and of course later
But
they changed and became.
both were in Indian Physics, Indian Express Group.
Yeah, yeah. Arun Shauri was the editor, and Gurumurthy used to write there, and both of them were going hammer and tongs against Dhirubhai because Indian Express owner was against Dhirubhai, and Bombay Dyeing owner, who was a rival of Reliance, was a friend of Indian Express owner, Nasli Wadia. So Nasli Wadia used Indian Express and Ramnath Goenka to go against Dhirubhai Ambani, and Gurumurthy and Arun Shauri were part of that gang. Now, of course, later they begged forgiveness to the Ambanis and all that, and they said we are misled and all that, and they became great supporters of Ambanis. But at that time, they were going against them. So Ambanis decided to build their own media group, to take to attack both everybody, whoever were the political enemies or business enemies, they wanted to attack them. So they wanted to attack Nasli Wadia, they wanted to attack Indian Express, they wanted to attack VP Singh, who had become now the prime minister, and he was also starting some inquiries against them and so on. So this Reliance group had taken interest in this Observer group and put in a lot of money, and they had hired lots of good journalists at very good salaries from all over the place. But all of us found out within a year what is happening. That is basically we are being used by Reliance for their purpose. So we had, so literally all of us quit that. All of us quit and went back to various different organizations. So I also quit that. And this time, whereas in Observer, I was doing a general journalism. I was writing on economics, politics, literature, even book reviews, all kinds of things, science also, technology. But now I joined a business magazine in '93, which was the leading business magazine. It was a pioneering business magazine in India called Business India. And there they made me technology editor. So now I had to become a science and technology writer, not science, because they said we have no use for science in business. We want technology, which affects the markets and which affects the profits of the companies or which affects the consumers, etc. Okay, so that's how I became a business journalist, and I stayed there for another 11, 12 years till 2004.
Then you joined Tata
There
Group, right? In the year.
there I learnt a lot, and on how to write also, because see, as I had written political leaflets and pamphlets, I had written research, scientific research papers, I had written essays, but how to write a newspaper article, how to write a feature in a news magazine, that I learnt in Business India. How to draw the readers in. And other thing my editor used to say is, you should, whether you are explaining macroeconomics or whether you're explaining technology or finance, your mother-in-law should understand it. Which means, you're not talking to experts, you're talking to ordinary people, and they're reading you because you are an expert or you talk to experts, but you have to make them understand what are the issues. So this converting very complex ideas in very simple language is what was I got trained in that in there.
Professor, later you joined Tata Group in the year 2004, right?
Yeah, 2004 I joined TCS, but before that, another interesting thing happened, which is that this whole digital revolution had started in the 90s with mobile telephony and internet blowing up in 98, 99, 2000, etc. So I started writing about them. Whereas earlier I was writing on pharmaceutical, steel industry, or ISRO or nuclear atomic energy and so on, or CSIR laboratories and so on. But now the growing thing was ICT, the IT and communication and all that. So I had to understand that. So I started writing about it. Then I was sent by our editor to go to United States for a month and a half to travel all over the place and meet a lot of Indians who have done well in the Silicon Valley, in the high tech industry. So we brought out a special issue. So I made a lot of contacts at that time. We profiled more than 70 people who had become very successful entrepreneurs in the high tech. This was in 2000, 2001. And then um, but what happened was this was again more about the startups which had now become multi-billion dollar companies. Now question arose: what is the history of this and evolution of digital technology, and what have Indians done in this digital technology? So this was a question which was raised by one of the readers. What have Indians contributed to the fundamentals of digital technology? So to investigate that, I sent a proposal to Tata Group saying that this requires support because I have to travel and meet a lot of technologies and laboratories, etc. And then write about this. That what have Indians done, which is a fundamental value in digital technology. Are you ready to support this project? And this is my project. Karke, I sent it to Tata Group in 2001. And just and then they liked it, and of course I had to go through many presentations there. Then it went till Ratan Tata and chairman of the group, etc. And they decided to back that, support that project. So I took leave for a year and a half from Business India, and worked on that project. And one of the and I traveled extensively to and visited all the major universities in US and Canada, and talked to more than 300 technologists all over the world. Read a lot of papers, patents, etc. And then and one of the things which came out was the book Sand to Silicon, which was published by Tata McGraw in 2004. Because Tata's had said we'll support this for publication during 2004, which was going to be the centenary of Tata's. So 2 years before that, they had funded this project. It came out in time. It was released by Mr. Tata himself in 2004, and then of course it was very well received by a lot of scientists, including President Kalam and all that. And a lot of people liked it because it was the first book which looked at not only the history of the digital technology but also what Indians have done in that. And after that, I went back to Business India for a year or two, and then in 2004, because my project got over in 2003, and in 2004 June, again Tata Consultancy Services, they invited me. They wanted me to join them. They were going public. Till that time, they were a private company. So now they are going public. Even though they're around from 1968, they are older than Microsoft and Google and all that. But they are going public now, and they wanted me to do certain projects for them. So though I was enjoying journalism, but journalism was also not paying much. My finances were not good. My savings were zero. So when Initially, I told them I'm enjoying journalism. I'll be your consultant from outside. So I was going to become consultant to consulting company, like TCS. But TCS said no, you come on board. And so I joined there as vice president, special projects in 2004.
I was to ask you about this book. Anyway, you have partially answered it. The book which has been well received, Sand to Silicon, the amazing
Yeah.
story of digital technology. And as you said, you interviewed many people there, and among them also Nobel laureates, if I am right.
Yeah, definitely almost all the pioneers of internet and Turing Award winners and so on, but also Nobel laureate. In fact, I happened to be in Dallas when the Jack Kilby got the year 2000 Nobel Prize for physics. Now, normally technologists don't get Nobel Prize in physics, but because he invented chip, microchip, and chip had affected change the world, so Nobel Committee decided to give him Nobel Prize in physics. And I was in Dallas, so I was one of the first journalists to interview him.
Oh, he agreed to. I think I have seen that interview.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Because he was a employee of Texas Instruments when he invented the chip, and I was visiting Texas Instruments, and I knew senior people there, so they set up the interview for me.
So, what was the experience like with him?
Oh, good. He was old, and unfortunately, just like a Gyanpith Award, the Nobel is also given very late. So people are too old. They can't even talk properly or remember many things and all that. Uh, but it is nice. He was still okay.
Professor, my next question is you once suggested to me that science communication be offered as a course and be taught at universities. So, how would you justify this?
See, actually, my suggestion is that there should be a course in history of science. Okay, evolution of ideas, how they evolved, etc. And science and can be also science and technology. In both areas there should be one course on history, there should be one course on philosophy of science,
Yeah.
and there should be one course on science communication. And science communication, I think, is required in number of ways, because today science and technology are playing such a major role in our daily life, but we do not know what inspired them, what led to these new inventions, new gadgets, new applications. Now, for example, in the last 2 years, we have heard so much about AI, but nobody knows what is AI. You know, uh, so um, so all these things need to be explained to people. Okay, and so media has a lot of role to play in this. Instead, they mostly review what is the latest mobile, which has come out. Earlier, it used to be latest TV. Now they'll talk about latest mobile or latest iPhone or something like that. But whereas actually they should be talking about the new ideas in science and technology, which are leading to changes in their life and their applications. So science communication is very important for media. Second thing is, there is a big gap between scientists and ordinary people. So all the top scientists, whether they're publicly funded in the government organizations like Atomic Energy and ISRO or CSR labs, defense labs, etc., or whether they are in IITs and universities, how do they convey what they are doing to the people? Because they are being funded by people's tax money. So they can't say I'm doing good science. That's all. Okay, my job is to do science, write new papers or get new patents and all that. And experts are reviewing my work. No, they also need to convey what are they doing, justify the public funding for them.
Yes.
And second thing is, they need to convey the excitement of science to newer generations, so that more and younger people come and join science and technology. Otherwise, I've seen all sorts of IIT graduates and even others finally going and joining finance, doing MBA and joining finance. What is the use? if your best students are going into finance, even after doing BTech in computer science, which is the most sought after from IITs and all that, then they go and join Wall Street banks. What is the use of that? So if you want to attract the best students into science and basic research and technology, then you have to also convey the excitement of science to people, that it is fun just pursuing it. Okay, and if you are good enough in that, then you'll get its own satisfaction. So from multiple angles, that media has to spend more and more pages explaining science and technology to ordinary people, and that also helps the policymakers, because policymakers are also ordinary people. That is, bureaucrats and politicians. They don't know science and technology, but they are making policies. But unless somebody is explaining the science and technology to them, they will not be able to make the policy. Okay, or they'll be based on just few consultants, they'll make some laws and policies. So overall awareness of science and technology, to raise that, you need science communication, science communicators. So you need courses in science communication for that purpose, social purposes. Second thing is, for the scientists and scientific laboratories themselves, they need outreach programs, they need communication programs, so that the work that is being done in these laboratories, very highbrow work, also gets conveyed to ordinary people, and also to attract young newer talent to these sections. So I think this is very important. It should not be left to that accident, that some scientists can explain. Yes, there are some scientists who can explain. There are some scientists who write well also. For example, Narlikar was a very good writer. He wrote about there are a few scientists who can write, but most scientists and technologists don't know how to write. Neither do they have the time or inclination to do so. They think that they are doing good science, that is good enough. So you need communicators in between who will convey their ideas to the public and to policymakers, to the government, etc. That's why I think that all these three are required: science, history of science, philosophy of science, and also communicating, how to communicate science.
On this, Professor, I totally agree with you because I also appreciate these three things. I mean, and you have put it more lucidly than I have done. Very wonderful. So, on this note, let us end this interview. And I thank once again on behalf of our editorial team and also Spring Chronicle. Thank you very much, Professor, for your time.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. It was a pleasure.